group will discuss about the Victorian age as the final test assignment, where the assignment is one of the material of Introduction to Literature course. Uh, but before we begin, let me first introduce the member of our group. My name is Kurnia Andeyani R as the first speaker, and at the same time, we will open a little about the beginning of the Victorian age until the growth of the British Empire. And then we'll continue by the second speaker, Yulia Ramaiyanti. The third speaker is Retno Wahyu P. The fourth speaker by Fingky Malakiano. The fifth speaker is Atika. And the last speaker, at once the closing of this material, is Suliantari. Okay, the Victorian era of British history was the period of Queen Victoria's reign from the 1837 until her death in 1901. It was a long period of peace, prosperity, profound culture, with an advancement in technology and national self-confidence for Britons. During the Victorian age, Britain was the world's most powerful nation. By the end of Victorian reign, the British Empire extends over about one-fifth of the Earth's surface. Like Elizabeth England, Victorian England saw the great expressions of wealth, power, and culture. Next is about the growth of the British Empire. The growth of the British Empire, proven by England grew to become a greatest nation on earth. Empire includes Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa, Kenya, and India. Imported materials such as cotton and silk, and exported finished goods to countries around the world. Because of England's success, they felt it was their duty to bring English value, laws, customs, and religions to the savage races around the world.
Hello, my name is Yulia Ramaiyanti. I'm as the second speaker. Now I want to tell you the next material. The next material is talking about the Industrial Revolution in Victorian Era. So it started at the end 18th century when theoretical knowledge and practical technology, scientific idea, were applied to the making of machines that transform the way things were made and dramatically changed people's lifestyle. The Industrial Revolution rapidly gained pace during Victorian because the power of steams to lead to a massive increase the number of factories, particularly textile factories or mills. By 1870, over 100,000 steam engines were to work throughout Britain. The industry depended on steam and steam depended on coal. The number coal-fired doubled between 1851 and 1881. The impact of Industrial Revolution in Victorian Era. The first is the explosion of the Industrial Revolution accelerated the migration of the population from the country to the city. The result movement was the development of hurrying slums and compact row housing in the overcrowded cities. The second is child labor. Children were expected to help to support their families. They often work long time hours in dangerous jobs and in difficult situations for little wages. The next is the Victorian thinkers. The first is Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens is a famous Victorian novelist with a focused, strong characterization. The second is John Ruskin. John Ruskin is the master romantic prose of Victorian. Third is Adam Smith. In 18th century, economists held the best government economic policy was to leave to market alone, to follow laissez-faire or let it be place of little or not government intervention. Okay, thank you. The next material will be presented by my friends.
My name is Retno Wahyu P. As well as the previous discussion regarding the Victorian era, next I will discuss the other three sections. The first discussion is the role of women. First, the woman question. The woman question in Victorian England referred to the various debates about women's place in society, with opposing voices emphasizing either the need for women to have greater economic, educational, and political opportunities, or the idea that women properly belongs in the home as caretaker to her family. Secondly, changing condition of women work created by the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a time of important changes in the way that women work. Frederick Engels, writing in the late 19th century, thought that the Industrial Revolution increased women's participation in labor outside the home and claimed that this change was emancipating. Thirdly, the Factory Act. The Health and Morals of Apprentices Act 1802, sometimes known as the Factory Act 1802, was an act of the Parliament of the UK designed to improve conditions for apprentices working in cotton mills. The act was introduced by Sir Robert Peel. Fourthly, the Custody Act. Despite the protests of some politicians, the Custody of Children Act was passed in August 1839. This act gave custody of children under 7 to the mother, provided she had not been proven in court to have committed adultery, and established the right of the non-custodial parent to access to the child. The act was the first piece of legislation to undermine the patriarchal structures of English law, and have subsequently been hailed as the first success of British feminism in gaining equal rights for women. And the other discussion in the role of women, they are the Divorce and Matrimonial Causes Acts and Married Women's Property Acts. Then the next discussion is working conditions for women. In this part, the worst working conditions and underemployment drove thousands of women into prostitution. Besides, the only occupation at which an unmarried middle-class woman could earn a living and maintain some claim to gentility was that of a governess. And the last discussion on gender and sexuality. In the 1880s, some of the habits practiced by women were their free daily habits. But the term homosexual came into English at very moment. And in the 1890s, women developed in various ways, as did the term lesbian, which began to appear in the 1890s. Rationally, women unmotivated by sexual desire, intense, passionate friendships seen as innocent, thus giving a rise to a feminine male character and a masculine female character.
Hello, my name is Fingky Malakiano. In this slide, I will explanation about literacy, publication, and reading. By the end of the century, literacy was almost universal. Compulsory national education required to the age of 10. Due to technological advance and explosion of things to read including newspapers, periodicals, and books, growth of the periodical, novel and short fiction were published in serial form. The reading public expected literature to illuminate social problems. Victorian literature. Number 1. Novels. Dominant literary form: social problem novel and domestic novel. Social problem novel, work of fiction in which a prevailing social problem such as gender, race, or class prejudice is dramatized through its effect on the characters of a novel. Example, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Domestic novel is a type of fiction that was prevalent in the early to mid-19th century and was primarily read by women. Example, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen and the works of Harriet Beecher Stowe. Number 2, poetry. Influenced by Romantic period. Dramatic monologue, a lyric poem in the voice of speaker who is not the poet. The one of example, The Runaway Slave at Pilgrim's Point by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Number 3, drama. There are frivolous, romantic, witty, more contemporary values, or satirical. And the last, non-fiction. There are essays, criticisms, history, biography, newspaper, and magazines. The age of periodicals. The age of periodicals was the age of a growing democracy, political and social, in which it was felt that a much larger reading public, still with little education and little political experience, simply had to be guided, and not of course by the old aristocracy, but by the new aristocracy, and the age of reading. Thank you.
My name is Atika. I am as a fifth speaker. In this video, I will explain the work that had an influence during Victorian period. These are some of the work that had an influence during Victorian period. The first is novel, the second is poetry, and the last is the drama. On this novel divide were three. First is early Victorian novel, the second is mid-Victorian novel, and the last is the late Victorian novel. I will explain the first is early Victorian novel. This novel explained the line with social and humanitarian term with relation of realism, criticism of social evil. Overall, this novel general optimism. The author was Charles Dickens. The second novel is mid-Victorian novel. This novel showed the purpose of novel. In this novel, the author showing romantic and gothic element of a psychological interest. The author were Bronte's sister and Robert Louis Stevenson. And the last novel is late Victorian novel. This novel showing a scientific look at human life, which in this novel direction of naturalistic to European naturalism. The authors were Thomas Hardy and Oscar Wilde. The second influence of Victorian period. Poetry won the most influence on Victorian period. The greatest poetry on Victorian period were Alfred Lord Tennyson and Robert Browning. Thomas Hardy is considered the best poet of the last Victorian. The last influence is drama. In drama, we have C on theater. The theater was a flourishing and popular institution during the Victorian period. The popularity of theater influenced other genres. Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde transformed British theater with their comic masterpiece of
Hi, I'm Suliantari. I'm going to continue the explanation from my friends about Victorian age. Now, we will talk about literary work from Thomas Hardy. That is Jude the Obscure. Jude the Obscure is a novel by Thomas Hardy which began as a magazine serial in December 1894 and was first published in a book from in 1895. It is Hardy's last completed novel. Jude Fowler is a boy from a poor village who wants to become a student at the University of Christminster, and he works as a stonemason and studies in his prison. He married Arabella Dawn and they have a son. After that, he moved to Christminster after the end of his marriage. He meets his cousin Sue Brighthead, and he decides to live with her, so reversing the institution of marriage. And he has a second son and daughter. He lives the scandalous relationship with the disapproval of the narrow-minded people of the university town. And then he loses his job and experiences poverty. This novel follows the Victorian convention of placing an orphan at the center of the story, but denies him the possibility to fulfill his hopes and takes him from defeat to defeat. The tragedy of Jude is one of frustrations, loneliness, and uprooting. Jude is obscure because he doesn't exist for others. Jude the Obscure represents a departure from the Victorian novel for, first, its portrayal of weakened vitality and despair. Second, the bleak urban setting deprived of dynamism. Third, the sense of anxiety and self-destruction. And the last, the impossibility for the narrator to explain and interpret things. Alright, I think it's enough from our group. Thank you for attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.